The pasta you bought at the grocery store this week probably isn't what you think it is. The brand that looks Italian, with a nice name and sophisticated packaging, might be using regular flour mixed with yellow dye to fake real durum wheat. Quality pasta needs only 2 ingredients: durum wheat semolina and water. Some of the best-selling brands on American shelves have 5, 6 ingredients, and none of them are there to improve the product. They're there to cut production costs and turn your dinner into an insulin spike disguised as a healthy meal. Low-quality, refined flour digests faster, raises your blood sugar faster, and leaves you hungry again in under 2 hours. That's not a coincidence. That's the business model. Before you keep watching, go to your kitchen right now and grab the pasta box sitting in your pantry. Read the first ingredient. If it doesn't say durum wheat semolina or semolina, you already know more than you did 30 seconds ago, and this video is going to show you what to do with that information. Stay until the end, because the worst brand we're about to reveal uses a label trick that looks harmless at first glance. And that's exactly why it's been working for years. Founded in 1915 in New York, Ronzoni was for decades synonymous with Italian pasta in the American Northeast. Then Riviana Foods bought the brand, and the recipe was quietly reformulated. The packaging stayed the same. The main ingredient didn't. Pick up a box of Ronzoni and read the first ingredient out loud. It doesn't say semolina or durum wheat semolina. It says semolina and or durum flour enriched with ferrous sulfate, niacin, thiamine, and riboflavin. That enrichment isn't a nutritional bonus, it's a red flag. It exists because the industrial refining process strips the wheat's natural nutrients out. They destroy what the wheat had, throw it away, and add back a synthetic fraction of it. And they put that on the label like it's a quality feature. Show zoom on label, highlight enriched in red and list the additives. Then show in green what should be there: 100% durum wheat semolina. Refined wheat flour has a glycemic index between 70 and 85. Real durum wheat semolina sits between 40 and 50. In practice, that means a serving of Ronzoni turns into glucose in your bloodstream almost as fast as a slice of white bread. You finish the plate, insulin spikes, and in under 2 hours your stomach is already sending hunger signals again. That afternoon crash, that bloating after dinner, it's not pasta itself. It's the quality of the wheat that was used to make that pasta. The cooking time on the box is overestimated. Cook it for the suggested time, and you get mushy pasta. That's not a typo. It masks the poor quality of the wheat used. Real semolina pasta holds its texture. Refined flour pasta needs instructions that hide how fast it gets soggy. Ronzoni isn't a bad product by accident. It's a cheap product built to look like more than it is: an Italian name, familiar packaging, a promise of enrichment. At $2.50 a box, you're paying for refined flour with Italian heritage marketing. Number 4. Mueller's. Mueller's calls itself America's favorite pasta. It's printed right on the box in big font, like it's a quality seal. But being America's favorite doesn't mean being the best. It means being the most purchased. And when you see what's inside that bag, you understand exactly why it's so cheap to produce. Mueller's adds vital wheat gluten to its formula. For those who don't know, vital wheat gluten is industrially isolated gluten, extracted from wheat, concentrated, and reinserted into the pasta to compensate for the low quality of the base flour. It's the equivalent of adding protein powder to a shake made with bad ingredients. It fixes the symptom visually. It doesn't fix the cause. Show zoom on label highlighting vital wheat gluten in the ingredient list. Cut to comparison with a 100% durum semolina pasta label with just 2 ingredients. Here's the real problem for your health. The gluten naturally present in high-quality durum wheat comes integrated into the protein structure of the grain. Your digestive system has been exposed to that format for thousands of years. Vital wheat gluten is isolated, concentrated gluten without that protective structure around it. It reaches your gut in a more aggressive form. And for people with undiagnosed intestinal sensitivity, studies estimate that affects between 6% and 10% of the American population. That extra, isolated gluten is one of the main triggers of bloating, distension, and chronic digestive discomfort that people blame on eating too much or stress. You're not intolerant to pasta. You might be intolerant to what they put in the pasta to cut production costs. And there's another layer worth mentioning. Mueller's uses commodity wheat, the cheapest wheat available on the American market, grown at industrial scale with heavy use of agricultural chemicals. Commodity wheats consistently show higher levels of glyphosate residue compared to brands that use certified or imported durum wheat. Glyphosate doesn't disappear when you cook the pasta. It's in the pasta you're serving your family every week. America's favorite pasta is a slogan built on mass distribution and low price, not ingredient quality. When a brand has to add isolated gluten to give structure to its own pasta, it's admitting on the label that the wheat it used wasn't good enough to do that job on its own. Number 3. Great value. Walmart. Great value shows up here for the same reason it appears on almost every food quality ranking. It's the Walmart standard. Find the supplier that delivers the bare minimum for the lowest contract cost. Sign, repeat, and put it in a clean white package to look neutral and trustworthy. Here's the trick I mentioned at the beginning. Made from semolina and or durum flour. The and or is the entire problem in 3 letters. It means that when durum wheat semolina gets expensive on the commodity market, the supplier can swap in durum flour, which is regular durum wheat flour, without any obligation to tell you. The label stays the same. The product changed, and that is completely legal. Zoom in on and or on the packaging highlighted in red. Cut to simple graphic. Semolina versus flour. Glycemic index comparison side by side. Understand what that swap does to your metabolism. Durum wheat semolina is a slow-digesting carbohydrate. The intact protein structure of the grain creates a physical barrier that slows starch absorption. Glycemic index stays between 40 and 50. Durum flour loses that structure through finer milling. The glycemic index jumps to the 70 to 80 range. In practice, you eat a plate of great value. Glucose enters your bloodstream fast. Insulin spikes to compensate, and 30 to 40 minutes later your body is already in a glycemic drop, sending hunger signals again. You pay $1 for the bag, but your metabolism pays the price every time you serve that pasta to your family. It's the perfect cycle for Walmart. You come back to the store hungrier and more often. And there's an issue that goes beyond the glycemic index. Great value is supplied by large-scale agricultural commodities, the cheapest wheat available on the American market. That wheat is grown in monocultures that use glyphosate desiccation before harvest. Desiccation is the practice of spraying glyphosate directly on the plant days before harvest to dry the grain uniformly and speed up the process. The result is that glyphosate has no time to dissipate before it goes to the mill. Glyphosate residues have been detected in multiple independent tests on pastas produced with American commodity wheat. That cost doesn't show up on the price tag. It shows up in your body. Before the verdict, I need you to do one thing. Comment where you're watching from. Because great value is produced by different suppliers depending on the region, and the and or on the label means the pasta you bought at the Walmart in Texas might literally be a different product from what someone bought at the Walmart in Ohio. I want to see in the comments if your experience confirms that. The and or on the label should be enough for you to never buy that bag again. But now you know what's behind it. Commodity wheat with a documented history of pesticide residues, fast-digesting carbs disguised as quality pasta, and a business model that profits from your recurring hunger. $1 a bag. Real cost incalculable. Number 2. Skinner. If you grew up in the South, Skinner was probably in your kitchen without you even knowing the name. It doesn't have a national ad campaign, no celebrity endorsement, no strong social media presence. It has something more valuable for a low-quality brand. Regional brand invisibility. You buy it because it feels familiar, because it feels local, because your grandmother bought it. But Skinner isn't an independent family brand with a generations-old recipe. It's a brand acquired by Riviana Foods, the same megacorporation that bought Ronzoni and applied the same cost-cutting logic to both. What differs between them is basically the packaging and the distribution region. The Southern nostalgia Skinner sells is marketing. The product inside the bag is the same industrial system as always. Show Riviana Foods logo connecting Skinner and Ronzoni. Text on screen. Same company. Same formula. Different packaging. Here's the simplest test that exists to evaluate pasta quality. Cook Skinner and look at the water after 3 minutes. It'll be white and cloudy like diluted milk. That's starch dissolving into the water. And starch dissolving into the water means the protein structure of that pasta doesn't have enough integrity to hold the grain together during cooking. That excess release starch isn't just a visual problem. It's a clear signal of a simple carbohydrate disguised as a meal. Pasta with low structural integrity digests fast. The starch has already started separating before you take your first bite. Instead of the stable, progressive energy that real semolina pasta delivers, Skinner gives you an immediate insulin spike followed by an energy crash. You eat, feel satisfied for 40 minutes, and then comes the fatigue. That heaviness after lunch that you blamed on eating too much might simply be the glycemic curve of a low-quality pasta. And there's an effect that people rarely connect to pasta: the bloating. If that pasta turns into a kind of paste in the pot, and you saw that in the cloudy water, imagine what it does in your digestive system. The excess free starch creates a slow-digesting paste in the intestine, ferments, and produces exactly that feeling of heaviness and bloating you feel hours after a simple pasta meal. It's not how much you ate, it's what you ate. Skinner has survived for decades in the South because no one questions Grandma's brand. But behind the regional familiarity is a megacorporation applying the same cost-cutting formula it applies to all its other brands. The white water in the pot is the product telling you the truth that the label hides. Number 1. Barilla. This one is going to irritate a lot of people. Barilla is synonymous with Italian pasta worldwide. Sophisticated campaigns, Italy's #1 brand of pasta printed on the box, that blue packaging that feels like it's bringing Italy straight to your table. All of that is technically true. The brand is Italian. The product on your plate, not so much. Italy's #1 brand of pasta is one of the most cleverly misleading phrases on American shelves. It's not a lie. Barilla dominates the Italian market. But what that phrase doesn't say is that the Barilla sold at your Walmart was manufactured in Avon, New York, with wheat grown in the United States and Canada, following American regulatory standards, which are substantially different from European standards. You're buying the reputation of an Italian product and receiving an American product with an Italian name. Show American packaging with Italy's #1 brand highlighted. Cut to map showing the factory in Avon, New York. Text on screen: Italian brand. American product. American standards. Here's the information that health groups aren't talking about when it comes to Barilla. The durum wheat grown in North America is frequently subjected to glyphosate desiccation before harvest, the same practice we mentioned with the previous brands. The difference is that when you buy Barilla, you don't expect American commodity wheat. You expect the European standard that built the brand's reputation. But the European Union has food glyphosate residue limits that are up to 10 times more restrictive than the FDA's. Italian Barilla follows European standards. American Barilla follows American standards. The packaging doesn't tell you which one is in your hand. And there's a direct consequence of that which you've probably already felt without knowing how to name it. American wheat is agronomically selected for climate resistance, production volume, and profit per acre, not for nutritional profile or digestibility. This results in a gluten profile that is structurally different from European wheat. American wheat gluten is more extensible and less elastic, which many people experience as a heavier pasta, harder to digest, that causes more intestinal inflammation. It's not gluten intolerance. It's sensitivity to the specific type of gluten that American wheat produces, which the European version of Barilla doesn't contain in the same proportion. If you ever went to Italy and ate Barilla there, or bought it at a specialty store that imports directly, and thought it tasted completely different, you weren't wrong. It was a different product. Same name, same packaging design, different wheat, different standards, different gluten profile, different permitted levels of chemical residues. Barilla survived the Atlantic crossing. The quality that built its reputation doesn't always make it. Italy's #1 brand is a reputation passport that Barilla uses to sell an American product at the price and prestige of an Italian brand. The glyphosate that doesn't appear on the label, the wheat selected for volume and not digestibility, and the regulatory standards that fall well below what the European version requires. All of that is in the blue box you grab off the shelf thinking you're making a quality choice. But before you throw out every box of pasta in your pantry, there are brands that do this completely differently. One of them costs less than Barilla, is available at regular grocery stores, and uses wheat that has never been through glyphosate desiccation. Let's talk about them now. The 5 best. Number 5, Garofalo. If you've walked through the pasta aisle at Costco and seen that Italian packaging with a discreet design at a surprisingly reasonable price, that was this one. Garofalo is one of the most underrated brands on American shelves, and most people walk right past it without understanding what they're leaving behind. Founded in 1789 in Gragnano, in the Naples region, the city where pasta production was codified as cultural tradition before food regulation existed in any country in the world. Garofalo isn't a brand that decided to follow traditional methods to seem artisanal. It's a brand that never stopped following them because it was always the only way it knew. Garofalo carries the IGP seal, Indicazione Geografica Protetta, the European Protected Origin certification. For the American consumer, that seal means one very concrete thing. The product was produced within European regulatory standards, which require traceability of the wheat's origin, pesticide residue limits up to 10 times more restrictive than the FDA's, and externally audited production processes. It's not marketing. It's a legal obligation to use the seal. The glyphosate that shows up in American commodity wheat brands doesn't pass IGP criteria. Show the IGP seal on the packaging with emphasis. Text on screen, European residue standard. 10x more restrictive than the FDA. Bronze die extrusion is what separates Garofalo from everything we saw in the previous block. The pasta is forced through bronze molds at low pressure and controlled temperature, creating a slightly rough and porous surface. But the benefit goes beyond holding sauce. The low-pressure process and slow drying at temperatures between 120 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 24 hours preserves the wheat's protein structure intact. The natural gluten is not damaged by industrial heat, and gluten with intact structure is fundamentally different from degraded gluten in what it does in your gut. Remember the white water from Skinner? The paste that forms in the pot with cheap brands? With Garofalo, the water stays clear because the starch is locked inside an intact protein structure. That structure doesn't dissolve easily, and that's exactly what you want in your digestive system. The pasta digests slowly, the starch is released progressively, glucose enters the bloodstream at a steady pace. No insulin spike. No energy crash 40 minutes later. No bloating. The difference between feeling heavy after pasta and feeling satisfied is often the difference between refined flour pasta and pasta with preserved protein structure. And here's the data point that's going to make you go back to Costco with fresh eyes. Garofalo is available there in larger packages at a cost per serving that competes directly with Barilla and Mueller's. You're not paying a premium for a product that few people can access. You're paying roughly the same for a product with IGP certification, bronze die, slow drying, and European wheat with strict residue standards. Most people who walk past it at Costco assume it's expensive and keep moving. It's the opposite. Garofalo is the easiest and cheapest upgrade that exists in the pasta aisle. IGP European certification, bronze die, slow drying, clean digestion. All of it available at Costco for a price that destroys the argument that eating well costs more. Number 4. Disecco. Ask any professional Italian chef which pasta to buy at a regular grocery store. Most will say Disecco without hesitating. Not because it's the most expensive, not because it's the rarest, because since 1831, the Disecco family hasn't changed the process. And in the world of processed food, not changing the process is the biggest differentiator there is. Disecco produces in Fara San Martino, a town nestled in the Magella Mountains in central Italy. The factory was built there for a specific reason: the water. The region has one of the purest mountain spring sources in Europe, with naturally cold temperatures and consistent mineral composition year-round. In pasta production, water isn't a secondary ingredient. It determines how gluten develops during mixing. Cold spring water creates a more elastic and uniform gluten network than heated municipal tap water. It's the kind of detail that doesn't appear on the label but shows up in every forkful. Show image of the Magella Mountains and the spring source. Text on screen, mountain spring water. Naturally cold temperature. More elastic gluten. Here's what happens at the factories of the brands we saw in the previous block. To produce industrial volume, they dry pasta at temperatures between 175 and 250 degrees Fahrenheit in a matter of hours. This causes glycation of the wheat proteins, the same process that happens when you burn protein in the oven. The proteins bind irreversibly to the starch. Gluten loses its natural structure. And the result is a pasta your digestive system processes like a degraded simple carbohydrate. The cheap brands essentially bake the pasta at high temperature to speed up the assembly line and destroy the nutrients in the process, turning the gluten into a nightmare for your gut. Prosecco dries between 104 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 20 hours, depending on the shape. Below the glycation threshold, the wheat's protein structure arrives intact on your plate. Intact structure gluten digests in a completely different way from glycated gluten, slower, more progressively, without the inflammatory spike that degraded proteins cause in the intestinal lining. Slow drying isn't tradition for tradition's sake. It's the only way to make pasta without destroying what the wheat had going for it. And here's something you can do yourself right now in the grocery store aisle. Look at the color of the pasta. Prosecco has that pale, slightly grayish yellow, the natural color of durum wheat slowly dried without temperature interference. Cheap industrial brands tend toward a vibrant or orangish yellow. That intense color is the visual signal of high-temperature drying or, in some cases, added dyes to compensate for the pallor of low-quality flour. Good pasta color looks almost understated. Bad pasta color looks like someone wanted you to notice it. Side-by-side comparison. Prosecco, natural pale yellow, versus industrial brand, vibrant yellow. Text on screen. Pale yellow equals slow drying. Vibrant yellow equals high temperature or dye. Prosecco is available at practically any American grocery store between $2 and $3. Magella Mountain spring water, slow drying below the glycation threshold, intact gluten structure, color you now know how to read. It's the benchmark. If you're comparing any other pasta, compare it to this one. Number 3. Rusticella d'Abruzzo. Virtually nobody outside of the American gourmet world knows this brand. But in recent years it's appeared at the top of every serious pasta ranking, and the chefs who discover it rarely go back to anything else. When you understand the process, you'll understand why. Produced in Penne, in the Abruzzo region of central Italy, a region you probably don't know by name, but which consistently appears in European longevity studies. Abruzzo has one of the highest concentrations of centenarians in Italy, and longevity researchers repeatedly point to the integrity of local foods as a central pillar of that data. The people of Abruzzo don't live to 100 in spite of what they eat. They live because of what they eat. And Rusticella d'Abruzzo is a product of that culture. Rusticella dries pasta at 98 degrees Fahrenheit for 50 hours. 50 hours. But the number that matters here isn't the time, it's the temperature. 98 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature of the human body. That's not a coincidence. It's the threshold below which wheat proteins don't undergo denaturation, B-complex vitamins aren't destroyed by heat, and the grain's natural enzymes remain biologically active. Industrial brands dry between 175 and 250 degrees Fahrenheit and deliver glycated protein and destroyed nutrients. Rusticella dries at the temperature of your own body and delivers wheat in its most biologically active and nutritious state. You're not just heating the pasta in the pot. You're finishing a process that never destroyed what the wheat had going for it. Comparative graphic, drying timeline. Industrial, 3 to 4 hours at 200 degree F+. Rusticella, 50 hours at 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Text on screen, 98 degrees Fahrenheit equals human body temperature. Below the nutrient destruction threshold. The rough surface created by bronze dye isn't just aesthetic. Every millimeter of Rusticella's surface is microscopically porous, and when it comes into contact with sauce, it doesn't just coat the surface. It absorbs. The pasta fuses with the sauce during the final cooking. For anyone tracking calories or on a diet, this is a practical data point. You use significantly less sauce to get the same flavor. Every forkful delivers the full profile of the dish because the sauce is inside the pasta, not sliding off the top. Less sauce, more satiety, more concentrated flavor. The pasta's porous structure does the work you'd normally do by adding more spoonfuls of olive oil or another ladle of sauce. There's a reason Abruzzo appears in the same studies as the blue zones, the regions of the world where people live the longest and in the best health. The region has altitude, climate, and water that contribute to that. But longevity researchers consistently emphasize one common denominator among centenarian populations. They eat foods with preserved structural integrity. Foods that haven't been processed beyond what's necessary. foods where what the ingredient had going for it arrived intact on the plate. Rusticella d'Abruzzo is exactly that in pasta form. It's not romanticism about old Italy. It's the logic of a process that preserves what the wheat has nutritionally instead of destroying it on the production line. Between $7 and $9 a bag at specialty stores and online. Expensive for pasta? Depends on what you're comparing it to. If the comparison is great value or American Barilla, you're comparing processed food with biologically active wheat, dried at the temperature of your own body, produced in a region where longevity isn't the exception. If you're going to eat pasta anyway, this is the version that works in favor of your body. Number 2. Banza, chickpea pasta. This number 2 is going to divide opinion because it's not even made from wheat. But the numbers don't lie, and ignoring Banza would be dishonest. 100% chickpea. 25 g of protein per serving versus 7 g for conventional wheat pasta. 13 g of fiber versus 2 g. Glycemic index dramatically lower. The texture is different. It's not identical to wheat pasta. It has a slightly grainy lightness and cooks faster. Go 2 minutes past the mark and it turns to mush. But when you nail the timing, it's surprisingly good and satisfying in a way that wheat pasta can't match. For anyone with glycemic restrictions, looking for more protein, or simply wanting variety without giving up pasta, Banza is genuinely superior to any inferior wheat pasta. Compare Banza to great value. It's not even a discussion. Banza doesn't replace a good Italian pasta, but it beats any industrial wheat pasta on real nutritional value, without any chemical engineering to get there. Number 1. Sfoglini. Here's the brand I told you that you probably have never heard of. An American brand, with American wheat, that does what American Barilla promised to do and never did. And that solves every single problem we identified in this ranking all at once. Founded in 2012 in Brooklyn by Steve Gonzalez and Scott Ketchum, a chef and a businessman who had one simple question. Why do Americans need to import quality pasta when they have organic durum wheat being grown right here? The answer they found was that nobody was willing to pay for the right process with American wheat. They decided to be the first. Sfoglini works exclusively with certified organic farms in the American Northwest. That means one very concrete thing after everything we've seen in this ranking. 0 glyphosate desiccation. The wheat that enters Sfoglini's factory was never sprayed with herbicide to accelerate the harvest. It didn't go through the permissive FDA standards that allow residues the European Union would ban. It didn't come from commodity wheat monocultures selected for volume and chemical resistance. It came from audited farms, with origin traceability, grown without the toxic residues that inflame your metabolism and show up in independent tests on conventional brands. American Barilla uses American wheat at American standards. Sfoglini uses organic American wheat at standards the giants refuse to pay to follow. Show USDA organic certification on the packaging. Text on screen, certified organic wheat. 0 glyphosate desiccation. Origin traceability. And here's where Sfoglini definitively separates philosophy from marketing. Remember Skinner, that yellow color we mentioned that can come from dyes to simulate quality the wheat doesn't have? Sfoglini does the opposite. When you see the red in Sfoglini's line, it's real beet incorporated into the pasta, loaded with natural nitrates that increase blood circulation and betalains with documented antioxidant properties. The intense yellow is real turmeric, with curcumin of anti-inflammatory action that researchers associate with reductions in systemic inflammatory markers. They don't use dye to fake an ingredient. They use an ingredient that naturally creates color. That's the difference between pasta that elevates your nutrition and pasta that pretends to. Bronze dye, slow drying at controlled temperature. Organic durum wheat from specific farms. Shapes developed for specific sauces, not to seem artisanal, but because the geometry of the pasta determines how it absorbs and holds the sauce. Sfoglini applied every principle that separates good pasta from industrial pasta and did it with certified American ingredients. It's proof that the problem was never American wheat. It was what the giants decided to do with it. Yes, it's $7 a bag. And that number is going to look different after this calculation. One bag of Sfoglini serves 4 portions. That's $1.75 per person per meal. Less than you spend on a bad coffee in the drive-thru. Less than any fast food. Less than most of the processed snacks you buy without thinking about the price. For $1.75, you get certified organic wheat, zero glyphosate, bronze dye, intact protein, and real superfoods if you go with the seasonal line. Compare that to the $1 bag of great value, which delivers commodity wheat with herbicide residues, fast-digesting carbs, and the hunger cycle that brings you back to the store sooner. Sfoglini isn't expensive. It's the real cost of eating actual pasta divided by 4. Simple graphic: $7 divided by 4 servings equals $1.75 per person. Comparison with price of coffee, fast food, processed snack. Text on screen: under $2 per person. The smartest nutritional foundation in the pasta aisle. Cook sfoglini and look at the water afterward. Slightly cloudy in the right way, quality starch being released in a controlled manner, not the milky water of Skinner that signals structural collapse. The surface of the pasta catches the light differently, not the plastic shine of super-polished industrial pasta. It's the matte sheen of a porous surface that's already absorbing its environment. The sauce doesn't slide off. It stays. And when you eat it, you notice something that's hard to name the first time: the absence. Absence of heaviness. Absence of bloating. Absence of that fatigue 2 hours later. You finish the plate feeling satisfied, and you keep functioning. That's how pasta is supposed to be. You were eating it wrong your whole life, and you only realize it when you finally eat it the right way. Sfoglini is the American answer to the question this entire video asked. Is it possible to eat pasta without toxins, without inflammation, without insulin spikes, without industrial dye, and without paying import prices? Yes, for $1.75 per person. With traceable organic wheat from American farms. With real superfoods if you want them. With bronze dye and a process that preserves every nutrient the wheat had before it ever reached your pot. This is the best pasta you can buy in the United States today. You didn't choose wrong. They built the system so you had no way to choose right. Packaging with Italian names manufactured in New York. America's favorite seals on products made with the cheapest wheat on the market. Dyes to simulate the color of quality the ingredient doesn't have. Glyphosate that doesn't appear on the label. Or hidden in the middle of the ingredient list. Every single detail was engineered to look like quality while delivering as little as possible. Now you know where to look, and that changes everything. If you wake up bloated for no apparent reason, feel that heaviness in your stomach after dinner, or live with that sluggish digestion you've learned to call normal, consider what you put on your plate over the last 7 days. Chronic bloating is rarely your body failing. It's your body responding correctly to ingredients that shouldn't be in your food. Comment below what brand was in your pantry before this video, and whether you're going to switch. If the answer is Barilla, read the label again and see where it was made. And if you thought pasta was the biggest problem, wait until you see what's inside the tomato sauce you pour on top. High fructose corn syrup, sugar disguised under 4 different names, sodium at levels your blood pressure wouldn't approve of. The next video is going to show you which tomato sauces to never buy, and the 3 that are actually safe. Click on the video appearing on your screen now. See you there.